Hi, everybody. Really pleased to introduce you to Jo Jackson today. And Jo has trained with us as a coach and has also set up a successful coaching business. And we haven't really interviewed many of the people that have trained with us in the past. And I think for those people that are interested in coaching training, they just would love to hear behind the scenes. What was it really like, and how have you found stepping outside of your corporate role into the coaching space? So Jo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm Jo Jackson, as Jo has mentioned, and I trained with In Good Company at the beginning of last year, actually. So we did it all virtually, and then I've kicked off and started my my executive coaching practice called Pivotal Moments Limited. So I'm currently embarking on this amazing journey, translating everything I've learned from my corporate career, sort of 15 years in the corporate career, into the world of coaching with executives and female leaders. That's the real focus of my business. So I started my career back in the day with Kraft Foods on a graduate scheme, worked through various different corporate commercial roles, frontline sales roles, people leadership roles, those sorts of things. And most recently was working at Mars Food. So I've had quite a lot of experience kind of working with people and people leaders. And so this for me is an absolute joy to have the opportunity to work in a place that's really a passion of mine, a real passion of mine. So yeah, it's lovely to be here, and congratulations on the podcast. It's so good. I love it.
Oh, yesterday was like just so surreal. And like today we found out that we're in the Spotify chart. So we got the #1 in the Apple Podcasts business category yesterday. Yeah. We're now in the Spotify business charts, which apparently is really difficult to get into. And, we don't know the world of podcasting. It's all new. It's really exciting. And I think it's just so good to do things in business that excite you, that thrill you, that you're outside of your comfort zone, but you're purpose-led. And our passion is so much about being able to kind of open the doors for people to coaching so they can learn more about it. So what do you think of the podcast?
I really enjoyed it. So I listened to the first 3 episodes back to back yesterday. It was great. I think what's so lovely, but I think there's a few different things that's so lovely about it. The first thing is that you and Zoe obviously are so warm and engaging, and you really bring alive that empathy and compassion. So you're real people. And I think I put on my review, it's like having a big personal development hug, really talking about these things. So that's the first thing. It feels like a fireside chat. It feels like just having a cuppa together, which was lovely. And I think what's great about that is it feels accessible. So you're really breaking it down in terms of what is coaching, why is it useful, how does it compare with other developmental tools, but also helping people who are looking into the world of coaching, whether they're HR professionals, whether they're business leaders, whether they're business owners, or indeed aspiring coaches, helping to answer some of those questions about what do we mean by coaching? It's a relatively new form of personal development, I think, but it's absolutely exploding. And it's never been more relevant than it is today, particularly in the world of mental health and all these sorts of things. So for you guys to be exploring this topic in such an open, transparent, sort of heartfelt way felt great. So I really enjoyed listening to it, and I congratulate you. It's awesome. It's so cool.
Well, hopefully it also inspires other people, like you, when you're thinking about how you're going to continue to build your coaching business. What are the tools that you want to use? Because, we have our YouTube channel, but, not everybody feels comfortable straight away, being on video, but they might feel more comfortable with the audio side of it, where there's more opportunities to edit it. There's something for everybody. And you make contact with a podcast host, don't you, in a different way to the way that when you consume video, that might be like, often on a small screen. But you have kind of had the journey that we have had in many ways, from corporate into coaching, and you had coaching yourself before you then decided to be a coach, which was the same as Zoe and I. And what was the point at which you decided, right, I'm going to leave my job? And because you don't have the support, do you, outside of you, it's you.
Yeah, it is me. So my journey, I think, is very similar to your journey, and probably very similar to a number of people who come into the world of coaching, and indeed particularly for people who are in their sort of pivotal moments in their lives. I think so many of us have that realization sometimes of something doesn't feel quite right, or maybe I'm feeling a bit lost or a bit stuck, those sorts of things. So I very much, so I met Zoe as my coach, as an executive coach with me when I was in the Mars business. And we worked through so many different things. And it was a really personal journey. So lots of tears, lots of exploring some really deep rooted things that were inside of me. And whilst I loved my career and I was really proud of my career and I really loved the businesses that I had worked for. So I worked for Boots, Mars, Johnson & Johnson and Kraft Foods, as I mentioned. I love those businesses. I love the culture of those businesses. But I was working in big commercial roles, so customer director or digital director type roles. And whilst there's, you're at the cut and the thrust and you're in front of people all the time, I just felt like something was missing. And what I explored with Zoe was that I felt like I'd lost my authenticity. So I really had lost my sort of sense of self.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is I'd lost my passion, I suppose. So whilst I built a great career that I'm super, super proud of, the thing that I love most in the world is connecting with people and developing people and helping people to, really fulfill their potential, I suppose, find fulfillment in their lives. And I really reflected with her that the time I loved most at work back in the corporate world was the time with my team. When I was doing developmental conversations or succession planning conversations, and they're the days where I came home with a real buzz. Yeah. And so, I had lots of thinking time, lots of personal reflection, worked loads with Zoe, exploring my values, my beliefs, what I thought was holding me back, some of those real fundamental things that as an individual we're not necessarily aware of until someone like a coach helps you to understand yourself. There is so much deep down that I think none of us necessarily understand. And it was an absolute game changer for me. And I say that categorically and without fear of contradiction. The coaching that I had with Zoe was a complete game changer in my personal story, in my personal development story, and indeed in terms of my career. So, and I just had that thing of this matters to me. And I wanted to move into a role and into a job and create a space where I felt I was doing something worthwhile. And that's why I set up Pivotal Moments, because I want to empower female leaders, business owners, people who feel stuck or a bit lost, some of those things that I had also felt. I want to help them and empower them to find fulfillment and live a life on their terms rather than feeling stuck into the box or the shoulds and stuck on the hamster wheel. So it comes from a very deep heart-rooted kind of ambition, really, of how I transitioned from corporate to coaching.
Yeah, and I think when you discover, what we call values in coaching, those things that you must have in your life, it's hard to go back. And the journey that you start off by having, coaching with a coach, like continues as you then train to be a coach. And, so we've been really privileged to, that's how I met you. And then I became your coaching supervisor. And we've had this wonderful journey together as we come in and observe you in your practices. And, we see what you're great at and kind of share opportunities. And then even in supervision, that's, your business name came out of,
It did. Yeah, it did. That was such a great supervision, wasn't it? We had such a good conversation, and you just said to me, "Jo, do you realise you're saying Pivotal Moments a lot?" And I was like, "That's it. Oh my God, that's what I'm going to name my business." So yeah,
and
I've got goosebumps even like.
Yeah, me too. And that's often something that holds people back is they think about, oh, maybe one day I might like to be a coach or I might like to train to be a coach, but to do that, they're kind of 6-10 steps ahead. And what would I call myself? Would it be my name? Would I call it a different name? And it's just so beautiful when it comes organically, out of a conversation. And you don't need to know what your name is going to be and all of that, because you'll figure that out when you're training to be a coach. It does take courage to step away from, the security or the perceived security of a corporate role into, the perceived uncertainty. But actually, it's the freedom, Jo, isn't it? Like, of having your own business and you can work in your own ethical model. You can say yes or no to things, and you are starting out, as many are, with like a blended approach to what you're doing. Do you want to tell people a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So exactly what you say there. So it's interesting because people do say, oh, it's really brave of you to leave the corporate world. Well, I understand that kind of mentality, absolutely, but it wasn't a snap decision. So this is a journey of mine that's probably taken me 18 months or 2 years, really sort of teasing out actually what is it that I want to do? What is truly going to make me happy? How can I make it work for me? Is it possible? Is it not possible? So all of this sort of self-reflection. And it's actually through the coaching training that I was doing with you guys last year with my triad of fellow learners. We are coached as part of that training program. And so you explore all these topics within that. And it started to really become more clear. I really got great clarity from that training program to be able to work out, actually, this is what I want to do. And this is how I'm going to do it. And it was really powerful having that live practice experience. So what I do at the moment, so I've got my one-to-one executive coaching practice. I also do some associate work whereby I'm a facilitator for sales and negotiation training for an organization which I absolutely love, that I've worked with before in my more junior career. So what's lovely about that is it's bringing my coaching kind of capabilities into facilitation whilst also leveraging, the 15 years or so, maybe a bit less than that, of corporate commercial sales negotiation experience. So that feels like a really lovely marriage of the two things, because I'm able to help other people to realize their potential in both the coaching space, but also in the sort of sales and negotiation capability space, which sits really comfortably with me and my purpose.
And a lot of people starting out do that. Zoe and I did that. So our very first piece of work when we started out was designing e-learning. All around coaching, and that was so exciting, getting that first opportunity. And then we've done lots of facilitation work, so whether that's in-house kind of coaching based modules, as well as one-to-one work. We've worked as associate coaches in other organizations. And actually it's only last week that my own website went live. So can you believe 11 years I've never had a website of my own. It's always been in good company. So now there's a joeweekly.com, which is like, take a deep breath and buying it. But I really wanted to let myself feel what it feels like to everybody that's starting out, creating it and, designing it and wanting to get ideas from others, but also to still have your own identity. And so we have our identity, don't we, in our corporate role, high achievers, senior roles, and so on. And there's a big identity piece that's involved, I think, in shifting careers. Like many people do successfully, but it is a transition, and we do change through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting to me is one of the things that I had to work on as part of my coaching was the mindset shift that it takes to take yourself from I know who I am in the corporate world. I'm at this certain level. I earn X amount of money. I work for this size of corporate, whatever it might be, almost those classical tick boxes of success, of I know who I am, into, I'm completely different now. What do I stand for? Who am I? How do I communicate what I offer? How do I value what I offer? Will people even pay me for this sort of service? The answer is yes. Like the demand that's out there for coaching, for support in this way is absolutely unbelievable. It's one of my previous colleagues actually messaged me on LinkedIn last week saying, Joe, everything you're putting out there, it's like you're in my head. Thank you so much. And it was like, yes. And to be honest, even that one message made my week. It was like, yes, this is actually working. This is useful to somebody. So it's just about a mindset shift around what your identity is and what it means to you, I think.
And you kind of keep touching on that of, is now a good time to train to be a coach? And the podcast that's being released later on in the week. So we went to our coach group, 1,500 plus people in there, and said, what are the questions that you're asking yourselves when you're thinking about coaching training, or did ask yourselves? And, that's the question people have, because they worry, is the bubble going to burst in the coaching industry? And it's not. As you said, the demand has never been greater. It's fantastic that organizations now are investing more and more and recognizing more and more their role in supporting the well-being of their teams, the individuals within that. And we know it can be really lonely at the top. People are navigating quite complex situations, and they need that safe, confidential space to be able to talk about their emotions, about strategy, just all of the things that they might not feel able to do, just to get that kind of clarity in their head when they are with the teams themselves.
Totally and utterly. And I think what's really interesting as well is it's not necessarily just coaching in a one-to-one sense. You mentioned earlier on about group coaching, facilitation, those sorts of things. You know, line management, in my opinion, in you know, the best businesses out there, is much more moving to that coaching type approach, less directive, much more coaching. And the premise of coaching being, we know what we need to do from within us, which I absolutely love and totally sign up to, is actually a really, really powerful line management and engagement tool when you're thinking about a business or being a senior leader in a business. You know, by using these skills, you're really helping individuals to seek from within themselves how to move things forward. Or indeed, you know, you're bringing people with you on the journey rather than telling them what's expected. And I think there's such value in that as an approach. So even if it's not about aspiring to be a coach and setting up in your own right, the skill sets I believe that we've learned through training with you are second to none in terms of going back into your businesses and then, you know, and turning up in a completely different, more inclusive, more a better leadership way, in my opinion.
It's great to hear you say that, because not everybody that trains to be a coach wants to set up on their own business, and also not everybody, you know, knows what they want to do with it when they start training, you know, in coaching, and that's part of what they might figure out. It might, for some, it's a longer term, you know, strategy or option they want to have, but the main thing is about connecting with yourself. It helps you to resolve some of the inner conflict that you experience, can help you to navigate conflict that can exist within teams and create this, you know, healthy dialogue around spaces. And a lot of it is having somewhere to belong, isn't it? You know, like when you have your cohort and then you have your mini triad or your duo practice, you know that there are people that really care about you.
Oh my God, 100%.
Yeah, you can be totally authentic with as well. So like you said, you know,
totally open. Yeah, exactly. Totally open, totally authentic. I mean, the triad, for my first round of training, because obviously I moved on to do the level 7, my triad from that first round of training are true friends. You know, they are people who know my absolute inner workings, and I feel so supported and nourished and nurtured by them, because they've seen inside of me in a way. You know, we've had some really open, frank conversations about things, and they've helped me so much. And I think that's what's so powerful. But what's also really interesting is when I joined the training, I was meeting people from a completely different way of life, in a way. You know, having spent my life in you know, the big corporates, I'd always met very similar types of people. And now I'm connected with people from really different, varied industries, different backgrounds, different experiences. And that in itself, as someone who loves to learn, and I think a lot of coaches are quite learning, you know, hungry, as someone who loves to learn and who loves people, that's fascinating in itself, because you're meeting completely different people who you might not have come across had I not had the opportunity to train with you. So it's every single part of it is fulfilling and nourishing in so many different ways. It's brilliant, it really is.
And for us, it's such a joy to bring, like, what we know is an amazing group of people together, and to kind of watch and see those relationships nurture and grow. And even we're like launching this podcast, and we set up the podcast like launch support group. To see people popping in that I went to uni with, or I did my coaching training with, that continue to be great supporters of us. And that means just so much, especially when you are making those decisions to kind of stretch outside of your comfort zone, and you're maybe a bit unsure about what the outcome's going to be. So hopefully, you know, the podcast, for some people, they're going to meet us in the podcast for the first time. Others will already be in like the different communities that we have, but also think, do you know what, I want to listen again. And even today, people that we're training currently on the course, like, have emailed and said, do you know what, I was having like a wobble, like people do as they're learning. You're in the program.
We'll go through that.
So much to learn, and that, you know, feeling overwhelmed at times. He said it was really what I needed to help me kind of refocus on why I started out doing this in the first place. And actually, it's okay to not have all of the answers in the beginning. And this is why, you know, I'm on this program, and I'm now feeling more open to be able to kind of lean into those learning edges. So that's really wonderful too. And you know, thank you so much, Jo, for sharing your story. It's really exciting to watch you. Check out Jo's website. What's your website, Jo?
www.pivotalmoments.co.uk. or check me out on Instagram as well.
Yeah, and also you're on LinkedIn. Jo is a wonderful person to be connected to. We really value our relationship with you, Jo, and loving seeing what you're developing, and watch this space for what we may do together in the future. So thanks everybody for watching us today. If you haven't listened to the podcast, please check it out or share it with your teams. As Jo was mentioning, it can be really useful for teams, even if they're not thinking about becoming a coach. As an independent coach is still valuable. And we'll see you all soon.